предпринимателей и всего, что с этим связано. Так, в общем и целом, падение реальных доходов.
Ни роста инфляции, который нивелирует рост заработных плат и дополнительно снижает покупательную способность граждан. При этом характерно, что Путин лишь констатирует, разводит руками.
Года его наряду
clearly came up with their version of Regeneron, that if you take it, there's a 70% chance of avoiding hospitalization. They ship it around the country, and doctors aren't using it. Now they're urging patients to ask doctors to use it. What's going on with this? We thought doctors would tell us what to do.
I think science, in this case, medical science, has become incredibly politicized. And you've now got sort of doctors in blue states acting one way and acting another way in red states, just as the governors are. And, you know, Brian, none of this needs to have happened. This was an anti-Trump movement led by Andrew Cuomo, Gavin Newsom, others.
China.
Yeah, that's right. As soon as they got an opportunity to put daylight between them and the president, they did it. In the beginning, everybody was working together for about, 2 weeks. But then very quickly, it all came to, red and blue again. And that, I think, is a tragedy for our country as well, because not everything is a political problem. This was not a political problem until the governors decided to make it one, because they saw they had to defeat Donald Trump. And how are you going to give him credit for the vaccine? How are you going to work with him on distribution? How are you going to defeat him if you're saying nice things about him? Well, you can't. You must say bad things about him. You can't give him credit. I mean, what he did with the vaccine, I don't know of any other politician on the scene today who would have done it. He pushed and he pushed and he pushed. Oh, what about the science? If you just let the scientists go, I mean, it's why... Trump did on the vaccine.
He absolutely did. They said, what do you do this and the studies don't work out, I'm not going to destroy my company. He goes, no problem. I'll pre-buy it. I will pre-buy it. I will bet on you. They get the fundamentals of the science down, the scientists give them the okay, and they go ahead. And he says, I'm optimistic. And they say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And what about the hypocrites? Dr. Deborah Birx, who quickly turned on the president, then disappeared from the stage on the Clorox controversy. She turns out on Thanksgiving, after telling us to stay at home with just our immediate family, she goes to Delaware to her vacation property on Fenwick Island. She was accompanied by 3 generations of her family from 2 households, including her husband, her daughter, her son-in-law, 2 young grandchildren. She insisted the purpose of the 50-hour visit, that's 2.5 days, was to deal with the winterization of the property before a potential sale, something she says she previously hadn't had time to do because of her busy schedule. I am not buying it. Oh, she has the busy schedule? Excuse me.
No, you're right. I mean, that's what has happened now. When government gets too heavy-handed, people always start looking for a way out. And even people who have the heavy hands, they go back to their lives and they say, well, I remember Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, her husband, I want to get my boat out. Nobody else could get their boats out. The governor of Illinois, Pritzker, his family traveled. So Florida. All of these things, Gavin Newsom with his dinner, I mean, all of these things happen because the rules don't make sense. They don't allow for individual decision. They don't give people responsibility. People are infantilized and must follow the rules. And so you see these crazy people screaming at other people for not wearing masks. I mean, it's a kind of martial mentality about these things. And when the people themselves who institute these rules are caught breaking them, they do such a disservice to just good old-fashioned common sense.
So people that work at Waffle House, they make $3 or $4 per table, and they do it. A lot of times their second and third job. Hey, I'm going to run to the Waffle House. I'm going to have a quick breakfast. You're not getting rich. You're showing you want to work. And they shut all these down. Walter Emmer is the CEO of Waffle House. He was on over the weekend. Listen to what he said, how crazy this whole thing is. Cut 16.
We are disproportionately hurting American people who are wanting to work for no data and no science that ties back to that being a dangerous place. And if you look at even the infection rate of our population, the tens of thousands of people that we hire, the population that works for Waffle House has an infection rate that's far below the national average. And so you'd say if they're working in an inherently riskier place, why wouldn't the infection rate be higher? And it's not.
So you send them home, where 70% of their infections come from gatherings at home, rather than gatherings in a public place where they have rules and guidelines that give you at least the hope of some scrutiny and some regulation. Instead, you send them home, all bets are off.
Yeah, and look, Brian, I think he makes a very good point about the science. There's no data that shows eating in a restaurant is going to get you sick. It's just none. In New York State alone, they were able to trace back infections. 1.4% came from restaurants.
За этот глупый, злобный и противозаконный призыв.
Это была реплика Матвея Гонопольского. Бывший глава Серпуховского района Подмосковья признан виновным по делу о коррупции. Поддержать Александра Шестуна к зданию суда в Подольске пришли 10...
У нас вырос и в рублевой части значительно, там на 70%, по-моему.
This wrong, as far as I understand it, the virus has mutated many times since it started, in all over the place, in different, very minor ways, because it mutates all the time, or something of this order. But not that anybody will notice, or not that it makes a difference. This one is different because, although I think they were at pains to point out that we can, it's not any more lethal. There's no reason to suspect it won't respond to the vaccine, but it's a little more virulent, and therefore you are able to catch it.
Остальных они перетопчут.
Выгорным таким образом.
I want him to do that. I want him to understand, let people know that he was the coach on that team that won a Super Bowl. And it's just like when people say, I don't want to give Trump the credit, he didn't do anything. Well, how many tackles do coaches make? How many catches do general managers make? How many drops do they have? This is all about teamwork and supervising the experts and getting the most out of them. So I was really discouraged to hear the new Surgeon General, this Dr. Vivek Murthy. He's had the job already. He's talking about if we get this vaccines, life won't be normal until really the summer. Are you kidding me? Even Anthony Fauci says 2 months. How could you get away with that? What's he trying to do, extend this?
No, he's trying to stay on message with Joe Biden, which is shut down, shut down, shut down. I mean, that's the Democratic message. I mean, it is imbued politically now in the left, Brian, that if you are for opening things up, you must be a Trump supporter. And we know what that means. So if you're for shutdowns, if you're for shutdowns until nobody ever gets sick of anything, then you're a loyal Biden person. That's how this has been divided. I mean, that sounds exaggerated, but the reality is that these two strains have been competing all along. I mean, President Trump, way back in the summer, was talking about opening up. Yes, sometimes he was too optimistic, but what would you rather have, a president who's too optimistic or too dour? I mean, to me, America runs on optimism. You cannot have this fear, this loathing, this shutdown mentality. This cannot govern America. It will kill America.
No question. Michael Goodwin, thanks so much.
My pleasure, Brian.
Michael Goodwin, Fox News contributor, and his column is in the New York Post, and you go at @MGoodwin_NY Post. When we come back, your phone calls 1-866-408-7669. We talk about the hack.
Diving deep into today's top stories, it's Brian Kilmeade.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along, which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/news. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job in ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And now you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Message and data rates may apply. Men over 40, is your body feeling soft and not as lean? Are you losing your energy, drive, or even your passion? If so, you could be feeling the loss of growth hormone. The reality is, as early as 25, your natural production of GH begins to significantly slow down, which means you start slowing down. Well, listen to this. New GH Boost from Nugenix is the world's first and only non-prescription supplement that safely supercharges your body's GH production at night when it naturally occurs. Clinical studies show the ingredients in GH Boost can increase first 90 minutes. And right now, Nugenix is letting every man in America try a complimentary 2-week sample by texting FIXER to 321-321 now. Get GH Boost and get your swagger back at the gym and in the bedroom. It's killing it at GNC, but you can only get your sample by texting FIXER to 321-321. That's FIXER to 321-321. Text FIXER to 321-321.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. Download and listen to Everyone Talks to Liz.
Had my guest today quit after the 10th business he had started, he would have missed out on becoming Silicon Alley's first billionaire. What kept him going? I'm going to ask John Oringer right now.
Each failure you learn from, it took a lot of learning to get to success. The interesting part, I didn't think Shutterstock was actually going to be the one that worked.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
Fox on Faith with Lauren Green.
For Kathy Lee Gifford, faith is the fuel that drives her success and keeps her moving forward.
But it's not my faithfulness that defines my life. It's God's faithfulness to me. So I'm just continuing on this journey I started with him all those years ago. It's taken me all over the world. It's taken me to the pinnacle of success and to the pit of hell in different ways. But he has always been alongside me.
Gifford is multi-talented, singer, actress, author, as well as the iconic host of the long-running talk show Regis and Kathy Lee. 5 years ago, she became a widow, and this past summer mourned the death of her longtime friend and co-host Regis Philbin. But she has not retired and instead is excited about a new chapter in her life, new projects and opportunities, and offers inspiration and encouragement to others in her new book, It's Never Too Late.
Absolutely no expiration date on Believers. Yeah. And I'm going to keep doing God's will and by his grace until the day he takes me home to an even greater adventure.
To hear more, go to Lighthouse Faith Podcast at foxnews.com. For Fox on Faith, Lauren Green, Fox News.
Now, from the historical audio archives of Fox News Talk.
Legendary tennis champion Arthur Ashe was the first African-American player to compete professionally in tennis. In leading UCLA to the NCAA title in 1965, he created a tennis program for inner cities in 1968 and was the U.S. LTA amateur champ and won the first U.S. Open at Forest Hills, being ranked co-number 1 with Rod Laver in that year.
This is still one of the Grand Slam titles, and now Muscles is the only player who won the Grand Slam this year. After a day of rest yesterday, he was pretty tough today, and I look forward to playing him again because for this year we're all square. I think I beat him about a month and a half ago in Detroit under poor lights. So here's hoping we meet in the final of Forest Hills on my turf. So I'll see you in September.
Stay tuned to hear more history as it unfolds before your ears. It's the audio archives of Fox News Talk.
Deck the White House halls.
I'm Casey McDonald, and today we're finding out what makes 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue so merry.
Celebrate the season at America's most famous address and see the traditions of the first families.
If you get the chance to go see those decorations, you really have to do it. It makes you remember what's great about America.
It's a White House Christmas, available now. Save 35% when you use code 35OFF. Plus, select plans include a free copy of Pete's new book and an exclusive Fox Nation Christmas tree decoration.
заявляют, что новый штамм, он выявляется только при помощи полногеномного секвенирования. И сами же они говорят, что у них полногеномное секвенирование занимает месяц. Мы имеем факт того, что в популяции вирус циркулирует уже где-то порядка 4 месяцев. И он обнаружен в СМИ только в Англии. Давайте не будем путать воспитательную работу в отношении Великобритании по поводу Брексита с реальной эпидемиологической ситуацией.
Разработчики российской вакцины «Спутник» утверждают, что она эффективна против новой мутации коронавируса. В Москве переливание донорской плазмы с антителами коронавируса официально утвердили как один из методов лечения. Напоминает сегодня газета «Коммерсант». В то же время, по ее данным, многие эксперты не считают это правильным. Публикацию представит Лев Гулько.
На сайте мэрии утверждается, что переливание плазмы способствует стабилизации состояния пациентов и снижает вероятность перевода на искусственную вентиляцию легких в 2 раза, а также увеличивает выживаемость на 19%. Реконвалесцентную, то есть донорскую плазму для лечения новых инфекций использовали и раньше. Ею пытались лечить больных во время эпидемии атипичной пневмонии в 2003-м, пандемического гриппа А H1N1 в 2009-м, острого респираторного синдрома MERS-CoV в 2012-м и вспышки Эболы в Западной Африке в 2014, 16 и 18 годах. Тем не менее, ученые не могут однозначно заявить о пользе этой процедуры. Отдельные российские врачи также сомневаются в целесообразности переливания плазмы. Руководитель клиники пульмонологии Федерального научно-клинического центра ФМБА Александр Аверьянов заявлял, что применение плазмы крови не снижает смертность, а около 80% заболевших коронавирусом COVID-19 выздоравливают путем естественного ответа иммунной системы. Врач одной из московских больниц в беседе с «Коммерсантом» подтвердил, что на практике не увидел эффекта от плазмотерапии. По его словам, процедура может быть даже опасной, так как у больных коронавирусом кровь сгущается, а инородная плазма способствует тромбообразованию. Впрочем, некоторые исследования такие риски не подтверждают. С другой стороны, плазма все-таки оказывает иммуномодулирующее действие, поэтому на ослабленных пациентов она может влиять положительно, отметил врач на условиях анонимности.
Лев Гулько представил публикацию в газете «Коммерсант». В Москве скончался сценарист, драматург и писатель Александр Курлянский, одному из создателей мультсериала «Ну, погоди» было 82 года. Слово Константину Пахмелову.
Александр Курлянский родился в столице, окончил Московский инженерно-строительный институт имени Куйбышева. Еще в годы студенчества писал миниатюры для капустников. В институте по-настоящему реализовал себя в мультипликации. Курлянский придумал попугая Кешу и великолепного Гошу. Как рассказал «Эху» художественный руководитель театра «Шалом» Александр Левенбук, Александр Курлянский был талантливым и добрым человеком.
Александр Курлянский многого добился в своей жизни творчеством своим. Он лауреат Государственной премии СССР. Ну, а чисто человечески он был очень скромным, очень честным и человеком, и писателем, и очень достойно себя всегда вел, всегда был мягким, дружелюбным. Он автор одной из пьес, которая у нас идет в театре «Шалом». Все лучшие слова про него, потому что он еще и талантливый человек ко всему. Поэтому очень большая для нас, для всех утрата, вечная ему память.
Телеканал 360 утверждает, что у Курлянского не было коронавируса. Он умер от онкологического заболевания. Похороны запланированы на 23 декабря. На этом мы завершаем большую информационную программу «Эхо». Ее провела Марина Старостина. Помогал мне звукорежиссер Наталья Якушева. Новости на «Эхе» продолжаются.
18:30 в Москве. Здравствуйте, в студии Константин Мирошников. Генпрокуратура Беларуси возбудила уголовные дела против Светланы Тихановской и членов Координационного совета оппозиции. Они обвиняются в создании экстремистского формирования и его финансировании для захвата власти. В августе, напомню, вскоре после президентских выборов белорусская оппозиция, не согласная с итогами голосования, объявила о создании политического органа, который возьмет на себя процесс мирной передачи власти. В республике не прекращаются массовые акции протеста. На днях Евросоюз ввел в отношении белорусских компаний и физических лиц, которых считают причастными к фальсификации результатов, 3-й пакет санкций. Больше половины всех врачей в Москве, по оценкам мэрии, переболели коронавирусом. Градоначальник Сергей Собянин, вручая награды группе столичных медработников, сказал, что именно столько сотрудников больниц и госпиталей так или иначе столкнулись с новой инфекцией. Агентство «Интерфакс» со ссылкой на пресс-службу мэра уточняет, что непосредственно в оказании помощи зараженным в городе задействовано почти 70 тысяч медиков. Начиная с марта в столице выявили больше 170 тысяч инфицированных. Мать мальчика, написавшего письмо Владимиру Путину, пожаловалась на угрозу забрать сына из семьи. Жительница Ростова-на-Дону Анна Антошина рассказала местному изданию 161.ru, что за 3 года она несколько раз обращалась к властям с просьбой посодействовать в получении жилья вместо сгоревшего. Однако не может получить субсидию, так как унаследовала комнату в бывшей коммуналке, где теперь живет с мужем и сыном. После того, как ее сын написал президенту, что семья живет в холодной комнате, которую пытается обогревать печкой, представители прокуратуры пришли с проверкой и предложили на время забрать ребенка. В погоде в столице сейчас в городе плюс 1 градус, давление 760 миллиметров ртутного столба. Завтра, по прогнозам синоптиков, в Москве будет около -2, преимущественно без осадков, местами ожидается гололедица. Константин Мирошников, служба информации «Эхо Москвы».
Детская площадка
is out digitally and will be released on a special 7-inch red vinyl edition for the holidays. Frontman Dexter Holland explained the reasoning for releasing the Christmas song, saying it just seemed like the world could use a nice holiday song right now, adding they've always been huge fans of Darlene Love, so when the idea came up to do a Christmas song, they jumped at the chance. Maybe this is what the world needs now. Laura Ingle, Fox News.
This is Fox News Talk.
Headline Rewind.
1969.
We find ourselves rich in goods, but ragged in spirit, reaching with magnificent precision for the moon, but falling into raucous discord on Earth.
I have decided to order the immediate redeployment from Vietnam of the division equivalent of approximately 25,000 men.
At the inquest, I responded as completely and as truthfully as I could to the questions that were put to me by the judge as well as the district attorney.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. I'm going to step off the limb now. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
This is the largest group of people ever assembled in one place.
Good morning. What we have in mind is breakfast in bed for 400,000.
News as it happened, news as it happens.
This is Fox News Talk.
I'm Ashley DeBorkin with the Fox Celebrity Profile with, spoiler alert, the latest celebrities to be unmasked on The Masked Singer. 3-time Grammy-nominated 80s singer Taylor Dayne was revealed as the celebrity hiding under the popcorn costume.
I loved the show, and I was tickled pink, and I was so grateful and gracious that the world got to see me on that stage, and to be revealed on such a high like that, it's all good by me.
She was unmasked during the semifinals triple elimination, which also revealed singer Tori Kelly as the seahorse and Olympic gold medalist snowboarder Chloe Kim as the jellyfish.
It was so much harder being on The Masked Singer, I think, because I didn't know what to expect.
Just like the previous unmasked celebrities, their biggest challenge was performing under a costume.
I couldn't really see anything, and my head was really cool, but it was also kind of heavy.
The physical stuff is real. The physical stuff is daunting. It's challenging, and of course, being such a perfectionist and being competitive, it's real. You're under a clock and you're being judged.
Ashley DeBorkin, Fox News.
Guy Benson.
AOC is looking at this and saying, if we have a Democratic Senate, we won't have Republicans with whom we'll have to negotiate. We might have to negotiate with Joe Manchin and some of the not totally left-wing Democratic senators, but if we line up our ducks in a row, we would have the votes to do what we want. We wouldn't have to negotiate because they understand that they're this close to full power, and it's Republicans in Georgia who can stop them.
Weekdays at 3 p.m. East, noon West. Listen live or get the podcast now at GuyBensonShow.com.
Information you want, truth you demand. This is the Brian Kilmeade Show.
Even though the Republicans were relentless against it, we found other ways to aid the states. So the states will get at least some of the aid they need. The localities and the tribes will get some of the aid they need. But the Republican relentlessness against state aid is just befuddling. Why is it any different when someone who works for the local government loses his or her job and can't feed their kids, or someone from a small business loses it?
That is Senator Schumer and Senator McConnell. Instead of using that moment to say we came together and here's our package, they ripped each other and talked about how the other was really to blame for the delay. Mark Thiessen, former chief presidential speechwriter from Bush and Fox News contributor, as well as Washington Post columnist now, a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Mark, welcome back.
Good to be with you, Brian.
Hey,
Merry Christmas.
Same to you. Why was this so delayed, and what do you think of the $900 billion package?
So the reason it was delayed is because this package could have been passed in July. Republicans offered the Democrats $1.1 trillion package in July, and Pelosi and Schumer turned it down. They turned down an offer of $1.6 trillion from the White House. They turned down an offer right before the election of $1.8 trillion from the White House. And they didn't. And they delayed it for one simple reason: they were ready to see the economy tank to hurt Donald Trump in the election. They didn't want to do anything that was going to give him a boost before the election. And then after the election, they delayed this for weeks and weeks and weeks because they are in the pockets of the trial lawyers. The Republicans, basically, there was broad agreement on most of the issues, including extending PPP loans to small businesses and having some more limited. And then the Republicans wanted limited temporary protection for small businesses who kept open during the pandemic and were trying to keep up with the ever-changing recommendations and regulations that were coming out of the government. That people, all these people who kept our grocery stores stocked and kept us supplied during the lockdowns shouldn't now turn around and get sued by a pandemic of lawsuits. And the Democrats literally would not allow even a temporary limited liability. And so those are the two outstanding issues, and they decided to punt on those. They finally decided to, we're going to take both of those out and do what we agree on. But this could have been done months and months and months ago.
Absolutely. The stimulus checks, $600 for both adults and dependents for people who make under $75,000. That president said that, he really pushed for that. There's no question. He was joined by Senator Josh Hawley on that. $82 billion for colleges and schools, $284 billion for the PPP program. Mentioned $600, $25 billion for rental assistance, $7 billion for broadband access, and $13 billion for nutritional access. The one thing that Pat Toomey wanted seems to have got it ends the CARES Act emergency powers for the Federal Reserve, because they don't want Joe Biden going there and tapping into this and tripling it.
And also, they don't want to use it as a back-channel way to get the state and local aid that they couldn't get directly. So they couldn't get it through the front door by direct money to the states. They didn't want to do it by having the Fed offer them 0.0% interest, 0.1% loans that are basically effectively the same thing. So they were trying to have their cake and eat it too. The Democratic Party is just complete. There's two things happening. One, the Democratic Party is completely in the pocket of the trial lawyers, and the trial lawyers give 97% of their contributions to the Democrats. I've never seen a party so in the pocket of a single organization than the Democrats are the trial lawyers. They just wouldn't give at all. And then two things were happening that caused them to change their mind. Because remember, Republicans were saying yes since July. Democrats were the ones saying no. Why did they change? One thing is, you've got the optics were terrible of all these Democratic governors like Cuomo and Newsom shutting down restaurants, putting people out of work, while the Democrats were blocking COVID relief to help those people get through the lockdowns in Washington. And two, Joe Biden got elected president, and he doesn't want to inherit a crappy economy. So he called them and told them, get something done, because the worse the economy is the worse the economy he inherits. So they did it for Biden, and they did it for they did it for Cuomo and Newsom.
So when you look at let's pivot to the Georgia race, January 5th. Karl Rove is increasingly optimistic, even though it's a neck-and-neck race and it'll be decided at the last minute. He seems to be more confident every time I interview him because he's in charge of gathering the money for these candidates.
Sure.
The Republicans are going to prevail. I have the best soundbite ever. Outside Chuck Schumer coming out and saying, change first Georgia, then we change America. Listen to this scary moment for all Republicans should they lose both seats. Cut 20.
For the last 4 years, many of us have been playing on defense. I know Georgia
big into football. Well, all we've been doing is defending ourselves against the guy who's in the White House and all this crazy stuff. It's time for us to get on the offense, to start moving the ball forward. And that's what we've got to do. And with your help in Georgia, that is what we will do.
Do you want him to move the ball forward? Do you want Bernie Sanders in charge of the Budget Committee in the Senate? I mean, if the answer is yes, you know what to do.
Yeah, but here's the thing. President Trump went and did one rally. Okay, I'm glad he did that. He's got the right message. This should be the number one focus the president has right now. He's wasting all of this time focusing on trying to overturn an election that's never going to get overturned, when he should be focusing on the future. He should be focusing on winning those races in Georgia, leaving the White House with a big victory under his belt, and going back and leading the Republican Party to take back the House 2 years from now, because that is within reach, and then taking back the presidency in 2024. He needs to start focusing on the future, not on the past, and he is. Sidney Powell into the White House to run election investigations. If we lose this race because Donald Trump was focused on the wrong thing, it'll be a disaster. He needs to his future, the future of the political party, the future of our country, and his political future depends on winning that race in Georgia, and he needs to focus on it.
I know, I agree. It's his baseball card. It's the back of his baseball card. And I would say this: some of his aides, according to that same story, want him to cool out and go to Mar-a-Lago and have a couple of days off. He doesn't want it. He doesn't want to leave the White House, period. He really believes that this thing was stolen from him. The problem is Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and Lynn Wood have not proven it. And in Sidney Powell's case, I thought she was fired.
Yeah, I thought so too. But then all of a sudden they're talking about bringing her on as a special counsel in the White House. I mean, Sidney Powell is nuts. She stood out there and, with no evidence whatsoever, said that there was a Cuban, Venezuelan, Chinese plot with the Soros Foundation and the Clinton Foundation to steal the election. That's guano crazy, Brian, and they are not serving the president well. Rudy Giuliani has been a disaster for him. He's not an election lawyer. He doesn't know what he's doing. You know, if you're really going to contest elections, you get somebody who knows what they're doing with elections. That's not even his specialty. And having that press conference where he's got the hair dye dripping down his face while they're spinning all these conspiracy theories, Donald Trump is going to leave the White House incredibly damaged by these people if he keeps listening to them. He needs to realize that his path to a second – he's the first president since Grover Cleveland who has a realistic chance of winning back the White House 4 years after losing it. He needs to realize that his path to a second term is 2024 and start focusing on that and stop with this stuff about trying to overturn the election, because it makes him look like a sore loser. It makes it's the message that said the reason he lost this election is, and it shouldn't have been close enough that voter fraud could have had any impact. Is because he alienated a whole bunch of voters who liked his policies, who said they were better off now than they were 4 years ago. 56% of the country said they're better off now than they were 4 years ago, but they didn't vote for him because they were tired of the chaos. And the chaos wasn't all his fault. The Russia probe was unjust. The impeachment was unjust. They never stopped coming after him. It's unfair, but he added to the chaos, and he's got to stop, because all those voters are saying, I made the right decision. That's not the thought that they should have in their heads as he leaves the White House.
And the thing is, Mark, as Joe Biden puts together the Obama team again and starts pushing climate change and raising minimum wage in the middle of the pandemic, and they start doing the ridiculous policies towards appeasement and cooperation when it comes to China, especially now when it comes to space. They're talking about doing it together with China. I mean, I can't believe some of the stuff I'm hearing. So when people see that, as opposed to the president instinctively knowing this only way out of this is a vaccine. I'm going to put together Operation Warp Speed. Instead of knowing the quicker we can reopen up our economy, the better we're going to be. It's not, his instincts were 100% right. The kids belong in school. The science bear that out. Restaurants need to be open. The science bear that out. He was right.
Exactly. But that's not what people are hearing about. Why he should be talking nonstop about the vaccine. All we should be hearing from Donald Trump is vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. Operation Warp Speed. be seeing pictures of him getting the vaccine. We should be him doing events around the country about the vaccine, talking about his successes, rather than looking like a sore loser sulking in the White House. And the reality is, he could, if he screws up this transition, and that he will not win a second term. But he can win a second term. He's got to. Most presidents, when they leave the White House, I've worked in the end of an administration, the Bush administration. It's 3 months where you get to tout your legacy with all the powers of the federal government behind you, doing events, talking about what you accomplished, reminding people of all the achievements that you had. That's what he should be doing, spending his time focusing on to prepare the case for re-election when Biden comes in and screws all of this up.
So I'm stunned by what we're going to be left with. This Dr. Vivek Murthy. Now we have 2 vaccines. We're going to have a third one ready to roll. And he's talking about, well, we'll be back to normal maybe in the summer. In the summer, even Mr. Doom and Gloom, Anthony Fauci, says we're going to start to see our lives return back in March. Is this guy really going to try to lock us down until the summer?
We don't know. I mean, but again, people will be people don't, lockdowns require consent. There's certain things that they can do coercively. They can shut down restaurants like that, but people don't have to. People will stop cooperating. And look, the reality is what happens. The vast majority of the burden of the disease. I did an interview on my podcast with Dr. Slaoui, and what he said to me is that by spring we should be doing much better, because the vast majority of the burden of disease on society is with those who are most vulnerable, right? Most people who get it don't die, don't get it, and don't get terribly sick. It's the vulnerable people who are the majority of the deaths. So if you can inoculate the people who are most vulnerable, you've lifted like 95% of the burden of the disease. But once that's done, and then the rest of us get inoculated too, and then we put it behind us. But yeah, by spring, if we not inoculate all the vulnerable population by March, then we're going back to our normal lives. Absolutely.
Oh, I just don't understand why we're not on the same page with that. It just blows me away. It's incredible. And Mark, by the way, you have Sweden, who said we're not going to shut down everything. They're suffering. South Korea shut down everything. Another surge there. We're seeing Australia had to shut down Sydney. Germany said goodbye Christmas. Netherlands, goodbye Christmas. The UK is going to a total lockdown because of a new strain that started. It's amazing. People go out of their way to say Donald Trump mishandled the virus. I have news for you. The virus has a vote in this, and everybody. There's one country that needs to be blamed and has to write big checks. It is China. We got to stop blaming leaders for this. I blame leaders for making it worse.
But you know what? Also, you're right. The leaders can make it worse, but they're not to blame for the virus. China's to blame for the virus. And what my big worry is that during the last year, anytime you tried to blame China, it was reflexively treated by the mainstream media and by Democrats as you're just deflecting responsibility from Trump for his mishandling of the virus. And so that reflex is still there even when Trump is out of office. And so I fear they're never going to hold China accountable, because it would be they would have to acknowledge that somebody other than Donald Trump was responsible for 300,000 COVID deaths. And I don't think they're capable of doing that.
The CDC didn't have the right tests. They lied to the president. She lied to the president directly, and they lied to the WHO, and the WHO covered for it. I don't know. The president could do a lot of things, but I don't ever think he should be in a lab coat preparing for pandemic tests or making nasal swabs.
Did you see the news that the vast majority of the virus that's out there now and spread out through the whole country came from New York? Right? So there were 2 strains of the virus. One that came directly from China that hit Seattle. That is a small number of the cases because Trump shut down travel from China early. The virus that came to New York it started mostly in Italy, came from Europe, seeded in New York. New York didn't lock down soon enough, and the result is it spread all over the country. So as Governor Cuomo, who's held up as this big hero, it's the virus that he failed to contain in his city, in his state, that has spread all over the United States right now. It's something like 80% of the virus is the New York strain. So, when we talk about who's responsible, where was Governor Cuomo in handling this disaster in his state? Because his state seeded the entire country.
His great line was, he didn't have PPE. He should have. He should have had the beds. He should have had a plan. But he goes, I don't do pandemics. Oh, really? But too bad they told every governor to be ready for one. I don't do pandemics. But I write a book about it, and I won an Emmy for it. We're stuck in this mess. Mark, don't come close. Whatever you do, stay away from New York. Promise?
I promise.
All right, good. Mark, have a great holiday. I always enjoy your writing, your insight. And how do you get your podcast?
It's What the Hell is Going On is the podcast. What the Hell is Going On podcast.com. And we got a bunch of episodes. We interviewed Donald Trump right before the election, and we've got some great episodes up now.
Go get it, Mark. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
1-866-408-7669. I'm going to be back with your calls. I know you have a lot to say on this and so much more. You're listening to the Brian Kilmeade Show.
Challenging with Brian Kilmeade.
Targeted at 18 to 21%. That's right. You can receive steady 10% return monthly payments with bonuses. As their slogan says, they specialize in realty investing done right. You can even use your 401k or IRA to invest. NRIA's 15-year track record and $1.2 billion in new construction development backs you. Learn how you can invest in this hard asset, real estate cash flow fund today, and receive 10% annualized monthly payouts with bonuses. This is something savvy investors should research and consider. Call now 800-700-5483. That's 800-700-5483 or visit NRIA.net. An offer to buy or sell any security is only made by our private placement memorandum. Read it first. See us at NRIA.net.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Message and data rates may apply. If you're a man over 40, listen up, because this could impact how much...
года объемы вторичного производства увеличились на 5,2%. А такие цифры в первую очередь обеспечило производство машин и оборудования. В ноябре этого года по сравнению с ноябрем прошлого оно увеличилось почти в 6 раз. По словам главы Департамента инвестиционной и промышленной политики Москвы Александра Прохорова, также на 163% выросло производство электрического оборудования, а в этой отрасли порядка 40 столичных предприятий обеспечивают продукцией многие масштабные инфраструктурные проекты по всей стране. На 64% выросло производство бумаги и бумажных изделий. Это стало результатом отказа от пластиковой упаковки, а также расширения онлайн-торговли. Почти на 35% выросло производство химической продукции. Здесь нельзя не учитывать влияние пандемии. Предприятиям пришлось нарастить выпуск антисептиков, мыла и чистящих средств. Ну что ж, мы совершенно четко видим, что реальные действия приводят к реальным экономическим результатам.
Это были новости экономики в программе «Экономика».
Во вторник в программе «Особое мнение» со своим особым мнением выступит экономист Сергей Алексашенко после 17 часов.
Москвы. Мы читаем с продолжением «Алые паруса» Александра Грина. Homo Science. Ключ к познанию современного мира.
Здравствуйте, с вами Елена Брызгалина. Вспоминаем самые важные темы в просветительском проекте Homo Science. О ядерной медицине рассказывали Валерий Васильевич Крылов, доктор медицинских наук, радиолог, и Александр Федотов, руководитель направления по связям с общественностью Русатом Healthcare.
Валерий Крылов.
Ядерная медицина – это есть область медицинского применения изотопов для диагностики и для лечения. Два больших крыла у этой птицы – это радионуклидная диагностика и радионуклидная терапия. Большая часть людей, может быть, знает, и специалисты больше знакомы с радионуклидной диагностикой, поскольку она шире применяется. А второе крыло – это радионуклидная терапия, это применение изотопов уже с терапевтической целью. Как можно понятным образом об этом рассказать? Во всех случаях, когда мы говорим о ядерной медицине, мы всегда говорим о метаболизме. В случае диагностики это у нас метаболическая визуализация, то есть мы видим процессы, которые происходят. Мы видим клетки, не каждую в отдельности клетку, а группы клеток. Мы видим процессы, поскольку они у нас подвергаются специальным радиохимическим меткам, и мы все это можем видеть. В случае же, когда мы проводим терапию, мы используем эти же самые транспортные молекулы для того, чтобы доставить в эти самые очаги, в мишени, которые мы только что наметили при диагностике, мы доставляем туда уже так называемый боевой заряд, поражая диагностики радионуклиды, которые испускают фотоны, и мы видим на гамма-камеры, или позитроны мы видим в ПЭТ-томографе. А вот для терапии это будут источники бета-излучения, сейчас уже альфа-излучения, которые поражают эти самые наши мишени. Радий в 20-30-х годах активно применялся в косметических изделиях. То есть были помады с радием, румяна, шампуни, чего только не было. Шоколад даже был с радием, на котором было написано, что вы будете светиться изнутри. А на губных помадах было написано, что ваш поцелуй будет светиться в темноте. Современная история, конечно, у нас другая. В нашем веке уже совершенно иные подходы.
Александр Федотов.
Скажем так, в лучевой терапии есть огромное количество разных аппаратов с разной степенью поражающей силы, с разной возможностью наведения луча разными лучами. Есть, условно говоря, лучевая терапия на линейных ускорителях, но также есть, например, протонные центры, ионные центры. Они стоят колоссальных денег, но благодаря этим центрам врачи имеют возможность лечить, например, детей.
Вы прослушали отрывки из программы Homo Science. Полная версия эфира на сайте Эхо Москвы.
Homo Science. Ключ к познанию современного мира.
Эхо Москвы представляет программу «Цифра». Погружение в мир высоких технологий.
С вами Яна Розова, Яков Широков. Здравствуйте. Из опрошенных Яндексом россиян 83% признали, что получают спам-звонки минимум раз в неделю. Как правило, это программы-роботы или операторы колл-центров, пробивающие частные номера по базам данных, передает РИА Новости.
Эксперты напоминают, что номер мобильного телефона может оказаться не в тех руках из-за собственной неосмотрительности. Например, пользователь кликнул где-нибудь в интернете на кнопку, которая разрешает обрабатывать его личные данные.
Кроме того, нужно внимательно относиться к подписям под документами и правилам использования персональных данных того или иного сервиса.
Не стоит указывать лишний раз номер телефона в разного рода анкетах для магазинных карт и тем более не публиковать его на сайтах бесплатных объявлений. На таких площадках всегда можно закрыть информацию, а для обсуждения есть личные сообщения, напоминают специалисты.
Еще один совет. Заведите два телефона. Один привязанный к карте для банковских операций, второй для общения. При звонках на первый трубку брать не следует и лучше вообще никому этот номер не сообщать.
Не стоит забывать о том, что производители смартфонов и программного обеспечения создают собственную оболочку, которая распознает сомнительные вызовы автоматически, помечая их определенным образом.
Впрочем, такие антиспам-системы действуют обычно на основе данных, полученных от пользователей и после очередного звонка.
Скажем, после звонка мошенника, выдающего себя за сотрудника банка, телефон в этом случае предлагает пометить такой номер. Все подобные номера можно отправить в черный список. Эта функция есть практически у каждого современного смартфона. Еще один способ — сторонние приложения или услуга блокировки нехороших номеров.
Предупрежден, значит вооружен.
Китай готовится запустить крупномасштабную систему изменения погоды, в частности засева облаков серебряными микрочастицами, которые способствуют конденсации водяных капель и образованию дождевых облаков.
Обычно их распыляют самолеты. К 2025 году Китай планирует увеличить общую площадь зоны проводимого эксперимента почти до 16 миллионов квадратных километров. Это больше территории сопредельной Индии, передает CNN.
Эксперты, в свою очередь, отмечают, что такая стратегия может привести к серьезному изменению климата не только в стране, но и спровоцировать конфликт с соседними государствами, с той же Индией, которая зависит от сезонных муссонных дождей.
По мнению исследователей из Национального Тайваньского университета, отсутствие надлежащей координации деятельности в вопросах воздействия на погоду может привести к обвинению в краже дождя между регионами, пишет Техкульт.
В простоте формы богатство содержания.
В интернете появилось описание серьги-сенсора, которое позволяет постоянно и незаметно мониторить уровень сахара в крови. Автор разработки Тайра Козлова, выпускница университета Хаддерсфилда, Великобритания.
В описании устройства говорится, что серьга содержит датчик, который при помощи высокочастотных радиоволн сканирует ткань в мочке уха.
В этом месте много кровеносных сосудов, поэтому изменение концентрации глюкозы будет быстро замечено, а значит, человек не будет нервничать и сможет своевременно принять необходимые меры. С вами были Яков Широков и Яна Розова. До встречи.
Эхо Москвы представляет программу «Цифра». Погружение в мир высоких технологий.
Радио «Эхо Москвы».
19 часов в столице. Здравствуйте. В студии Константин Мирошников. В эфире информационная программа «Эхо». Вот и главные темы. В Беларуси против Тихановской и членов Координационного совета оппозиции завели уголовные дела. Французская пресса узнала о переброске российских военных в ЦАР после мятежа. Бизнес-джетам разрешат летать между Россией и Великобританией в особом порядке.
Вы слушаете информационную программу «Эхо».
В Беларуси возбудили дело об экстремизме против Светланы Тихановской. Оппозиция считает ее победителем президентских выборов. В числе фигурантов также называют членов Координационного совета оппозиции. Им вменяют создание экстремистского формирования и заговор с целью захвата власти. Ранее, напомню, Тихановская предъявила ультиматум действующему президенту Александру Лукашенко. До конца октября он должен был объявить об уходе, остановить насилие на улицах и освободить всех политзаключенных. После того, как срок ультиматума истек, лидер оппозиции призвала всех белорусов присоединиться к общенациональной забастовке.
С 9 августа мы проделали большой путь к честной жизни в свободной стране. И обратно уже не повернем. Но иногда, чтобы двигаться дальше, нужно остановиться. Уважение. Мы требуем, чтобы нас услышали. Мы будем бороться за справедливость. 26 октября. Национальная забастовка. Остановим все, чтобы показать. Нас не остановить.
Тихановская уехала из Беларуси в день президентских выборов 9 августа. Она находится в Европе, где за последнее время встретилась с главами нескольких государств, которые не признали Лукашенко легитимным президентом. Французская пресса сообщила о переброске в Центральноафриканскую республику российских военных. В стране несколько повстанческих группировок подняли мятеж в преддверии президентских и парламентских выборов. Об этом в материале Олега Овчаренко.
Всего в ЦАР, по данным газеты «Фигаро», прибыло несколько сотен российских военных. Помимо этого, речь идет о переброске тяжелой техники. Об этом изданию сказал официальный представитель правительства ЦАР, не уточнив, впрочем, когда это произошло, а также где базируются войска. Он отметил, что военнослужащие прибыли в рамках специальной договоренности между Центральноафриканской республикой и Москвой. Кроме того, газета утверждает, что россияне осуществляют личную охрану президента страны. Речь идет о сотрудниках частных военных компаний. Кроме того, советники из Москвы готовят местных военнослужащих, говорится в публикации. Сообщения о деятельности российских частных охранных и военных компаний в ЦАР поступают уже несколько лет. В том числе речь идет о ЧВК «Вагнера», которую связывают с бизнесменом Евгением Пригожиным. 2 года назад в Центральноафриканской республике были убиты журналисты Архан Джемаль, Александр Расторгуев и Кирилл Радченко, которые собирались снять фильм о деятельности ЧВК «Вагнера».
Российские власти заверяют, что не посылают военных в ЦАР и соблюдают все требования Совета безопасности ООН по этой стране. Бизнес-джеты смогут летать между Россией и Великобританией только с разрешения оперативного штаба. Это следует из текста телеграммы Росавиации, на которую ссылается агентство ТАСС. При этом все остальные разрешения на полеты, как регулярные, так и нерегулярные, на период с 22 по 29 декабря отозваны. Депутат Госдумы России Ионин в интервью «Эхо» противопоставил интересы бизнес-элиты и здоровья российских граждан.
Многие европейские страны уже приняли такое решение. Это не какая-то прихоть. Понятно, что любые ограничения, они мешают людям, мешают обычному укладу жизни. Но сегодня это жизненная необходимость, потому что мы прекрасно понимаем, что пока они не разберутся с этим мутирующим своим вирусом, не разберутся, как остановить его распространение, лучше не впускать потенциальных носителей в территорию Российской Федерации. Понятно, что сегодня у ряда представителей, назовем их так, российской элиты, тоже Англия есть какие-то коммерческие интересы, там личное имущество, родные, близкие и так далее. Но это на одной чаше весов, что им удобно туда летать и не закрывать ответственность. А на другой чаше весов наша система здравоохранения.
Ионин назвал изоляцию самым эффективным способом борьбы с пандемией в этой ситуации. Напомню, с вчерашнего дня европейские страны начали закрывать транспортное сообщение с Великобританией из-за распространения в этой стране нового штамма коронавируса. По погоде в Москве сейчас в городе плюс 1 градус, давление 760 миллиметров ртутного столба. Завтра по прогнозам около минус 2, преимущественно без осадков, местами гололедица. Служба информации «Эхо Москвы».
Реклама.
Folk songs at the Library of Congress and a pioneering oral historian who recorded the early story of American folk artists.
Since I was 17, that was pretty close to 18 straight years. I'd been in every back alley in every little town, and it got so I wasn't feeling fresh about America. It was coming out of my ears, and I wasn't enjoying it anymore. So it seemed to me that the big problem that time was to make the world feel like a world of various people speaking various languages, all about the same big human problems.
Stay tuned to hear more history as it unfolds before your ears. It's the audio archives of Fox News Talk.
From the Fox News radio studios in New York City, information you want, truth you demand. It's Brian Kilmeade.
Welcome, everyone, to the latest moments of the Brian Kilmeade Show, coming to you from New York, heard around the country, around the world, and seen on Fox Nation, the app America can't get enough of. We're seeing some breaking news now, new information on the Lockerbie bombing in 1988. It just goes to show you how relentless the Justice Department is. More people are involved. They're still unwinding what happened way back then, with then Muammar Gaddafi behind it. So we're looking at that. But now AG Barr is taking general questions about him leaving, about can you pardon yourself, answering questions about whether Russia is responsible for the big hack, or is it the Chinese? So he's handling some of that the way he always does, skillfully. We'll talk about that today. The vice president's supposed to get his vaccine. Soon our president will. The current vice president got his already, but Joe Biden will get it at some point today. So will Jill Biden. So for now, also this hour, we're going to be joined by Jonathan Swan, who is preparing himself now, and Brett Baer at the bottom of the hour. Let's get to the big three.
Now, with the stories you need to know, it's Brian's Big Three.
Number 3.
I've been covering cyber attacks on the U.S. government for more than 20 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this. We're talking not just one agency, but departments across the entire federal government.
Wow, that really puts it in perspective. Pierre Thomas on ABC, the mother of all hacks. What's the scope, who's behind it, and who's responsible for letting it happen?
Number 2.
This is going to be very close because the Democrats have got momentum. They've got to get out the vote machine with Stacey Abrams, and they have won the presidential race for the first time since 1992, and that's given them a burst of energy.
There you go. Call Rove. All eyes on Georgia as we try to find out who's going to win as millions pour in, and 1.3 have already voted. We'll talk about what it means for the president in 2024.
Number 1.
Where I stand, from where Senate Republicans stand, there's no reason why this urgent package could not have been signed into law multiple months ago.
Republican relentlessness against state aid is just befuddling.
Yeah, they're still not getting along. Help is here in two ways. With an aid package and yet another vaccine is rolling out today. Unfortunately, what's not over is the insane lockdowns we're expected to accept, while yet another government official stiff-arms the restrictions that she demanded. I'm talking about Dr. Birx. Joining us now, a man that will not be locked down, cannot be contained, but he always is must be read. Jonathan Swan of Axios, welcome back.
How are you?
Good, Jonathan. First off, what about this weekend with the president? Evidently, he's far from giving up on 2020, and there are reports of fireworks at the Oval.
Yeah, I've just been candid with you, Brian. He's got there's some pretty, I don't even know what the right word is. Let's just call it bizarre theories being floated by some people, with the minority of people around him. It's even gotten to the point, right, it's actually getting completely ridiculous. One of the gentlemen who was in the Oval Office meeting on Friday night is now tweeting that what President Trump's White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, wants him to lose and is lying to him. So they're actually pushing to him people like Sidney Powell, this guy Patrick Byrne, that your closest aides, President Trump, Mark Meadows, Pat Cipollone, they're in on this conspiracy. They want you to lose. They're trying to undermine you. I mean, this is just not connected to reality, Brian. It is not connected to reality, and there's actually no other way. It's not a partisan point to make. I'm just describing these are people who have served the president for a long time. They're in his inner circle. The idea that they want him to lose, and they're like, because they won't go along with Sidney Powell's theory that, the millions of votes are changed from Venezuela in these voting machines now makes them some traitor to President Trump. I mean, we're getting into some really bizarre territory.
I agree with you 100%, and I just think, too, where is Bill Stepien? Where is Jared Kushner? Where are all these people that were around for the election? If they're going to fight it out, he should have his A-team. This is not his A-team. I thought he fired Sidney Powell. Lynn Wood, I don't think, ever worked within the inner sanctum. And Rudy Giuliani's fighting the good fight, but he's had no success so far.
Well, you say fighting the good fight. I have to say, I'm not sure I agree with you. I mean, Thursday night, Ken Cuccinelli, who is second in command at the Department of Homeland Security, gets a phone call from Rudy Giuliani, the president's lawyer, asking him to get the Department of Homeland Security to go around the swing states seizing voting machines. I mean, this doesn't seem like... I mean, he had to tell Rudy Giuliani that, in his view and in the view of the lawyers of the department, they don't have the legal authority to be going around swing states seizing voting machines. This is not sort of Oliver Wendell Holmes' legal strategy here. We're talking a very shoot-from-the-hip... I mean, we're talking about the President of the United States here. This does not seem to be well-thought-through representation, to put it mildly.
It seems like Michael Flynn is off the reservation, too. That's not the same guy. I always knew he was a direct, Harry Truman-like. I had no problem with his approach. I thought he was going to work out as a national security advisor. We all know what happened. But now, isn't he the one who recommended martial law?
Yeah, I mean, he said publicly that, I believe it might have been on Newsmax, that the military martial law is not something to worry about, and the military can go in and rerun elections in these states. It's actually forced Pentagon leadership to come out again. Mark Milley had already done this before the election, but they've had to come out again and say that the military has no role in adjudicating elections in this country. Again, I'm not suggesting that anything's actually going to happen. I'm not one of those people that believes that, the military's going to rise up and, overturn elections or whatever, but it's just reckless talk. It's not attached to reality. And again, people have attacked me for saying this, and bias, whatever. I don't think it's a partisan point to make. I really don't. I'm just making a point that I think is a very reasonable point, and it's a point that's not my point. It's a point that's shared almost universally by the people who work for Donald Trump and have worked for him for a long time. These are not people... President Trump isn't surrounded in his inner circle by people who hate him and want him to lose. People who are still there with him after 4 years, they love him. They want him to win. They work their they work their butts off to help him win. And he's now got this very small clique of people, Sidney Powell, this guy Patrick Byrne, Rudy Giuliani to some extent, Flynn, who are giving him this notion that all these people that you think you trust, they're actually trying to help you lose, they're gutless, they're lying to you, whatever, and it's just not true. Like, I cover these people every day. I mean, I'll be the first to criticize them about, or write something about them that they don't like. I've written lots of stories that I'm sure Pat Cipollone and Mark Meadows don't like, but I know from my reporting, these people are not trying to destroy the president. It's not true.
Yeah. Put it this way. I mean, I know Mark Meadows gets it. And put it this way. You might look back at this election and say that, when they passed the first rescue package and include this Wild West mail-in voting where you don't have to ask for it, we're going to mail it to you anyway. We're going to use voter rolls that might not be updated for Nevada and New Jersey. I get it. That was when the beginning of the doubt in this election began to percolate. And they never stopped it. It's like, even if there were problems in Michigan, problems in Pennsylvania, problems in Arizona, problems in Wisconsin, this stuff had to be dealt with early. And the way we're doing it now is not going to get it done.
No, it's not. But what we're talking about is not even that. I mean, it's moved way beyond that. I mean, they're not even talking about mail-in voting at this point. They're talking about voting machines and, you know, getting the Department of Homeland Security to seize the machines and just stuff that is so far beyond that conversation about whether it's appropriate to send unsolicited mail-in ballots out to people. I mean, we're so far beyond that conversation now. It's two separate conversations at this point.
I mean, I just talked to Mark Thiessen, and the president's, what he is able to have pulled off, those crowds at the end, the late surge to close the gap in the middle of the pandemic, getting it himself, not being able to campaign the way he wanted to, having all these outdoor events with 20-degree weather, with tens of thousands still showing up. He has this track record that Democrats will never like, but Republicans will begin to like more and more as he pulls back, and we see maybe a counter-narrative emerge if the Biden administration is like the Obama administration. He could be he comes back, helps the House go Republican, first takes January 5th, keeps the Senate, then helps the House go Republican. He could be in unbelievable shape in 4 years. But it all matters what he's doing now.
Of course. I mean, you know, I've said this. I've actually had this conversation with a couple of the prospective Republican 2024 candidates, and I've sort of said to them, I said, look, I've got to be honest with you. I don't like your chances against Trump in 2024. But, you know, it's a long way away. And the more this rolls out, you know, it's hard to make predictions. I mean, again, we're going into really bizarre territory with some of these ideas that are being floated.
Well, the other one thing President did come out, we saw a lot of statement, not necessarily your stories, so-called insider stories that the president is not true, and other people have said, I don't know where that came from. President tweeted out, I'm not talking about martial law. So right now it's all swirling, Washington insider stuff. Nothing's happened, except for the president has not conceded. And January 6th is when they certify everything. And there'll probably be there'll be Matt Gaetz and company saying a few things, maybe Tommy Tuberville, and then they'll just move on. And we'll see if things settle down from here. When you actually look out there right now, and you see a lot of people really getting restless and the numbers revealing that the shutdown is overkill, as dangerous as this is, and the president's promise of producing vaccines is coming to fruition in spades. You have a third one, according to the Admiral Giroir, that could roll out in a few weeks. We got a second one today. The president could be out there saying, what did I tell you?
Yeah, and he's been doing that a little bit, but it certainly hasn't been his dominant message. Obviously, he's mostly been focused on the campaign, but on the election. But look, it's one of those statements that he made that, frankly, a lot of people ridiculed earlier in the year. You know, this notion that there could be a vaccine by the end of the year, and here it is. And here, as you say, here are multiple vaccines. So it is one of the most encouraging and almost miraculous stories, the speed at which these vaccines have come to market. It looks, based on what I'm hearing from officials at the moment, it looks like they could have this for the general population probably by around June next year, which again is, I mean, it seems like a long way away, but it's not really, and it's a phenomenal scientific achievement. The unfortunate thing is just so many people have died and continue to die of this virus in the meantime.
And if you look around the world, I mean, when Israel, one of the most disciplined societies, can't handle it, when Germany, arguably the most disciplined Western society, can't handle it, they said goodbye Christmas already. Netherlands said goodbye Christmas already. France, not even considering it. The UK is going for a total lockdown. We don't ever get the truth out of Russia. But if you look at all these countries, at all these different approaches, everybody that just said Trump is the problem, no one's got this thing under control. The virus has a vote. We can't ride it because we're in the middle of it. Quick question for Jonathan Swan. Are you going to pivot to the White House beat? Joe Biden becomes president. Will that be your beat?
Yeah, I'm going next year. I'll be covering the Biden White House.
Right away, what's going to be your greatest challenge? I mean, the access is going to be extremely limited.
Yeah, they're very different in the sense of incredibly leak-resistant and disciplined. The story I'm going to be chasing, there's a lot of stories I'll be chasing, but a couple just off the outset. China is going to be such an interesting and consequential story. How he handles that relationship after President Trump. And then Iran obviously wants to get back in that nuclear deal. Does he give up all the leverage straight away with sanctions without getting any additional concessions from Iran? That's going to be hugely consequential, and it's something that America's Middle East allies, including Israel, are worried about. So there's a couple of stories that I'll be chasing right off the outset.
Well, here's what Trey Gowdy says you should be chasing. Cut 31.
It needs to be investigated, Jesse, and there are three groups that do investigations in our culture. There's law enforcement, the FBI, DOJ, if it's criminal in nature, but all bad things aren't criminal. So that's why you have... The media has not lifted a... If you don't believe any of what you just said, even if someone is really skeptical, Joe was clear. He knows absolutely nothing about anything. It's the Sergeant Schultz defense. I know nothing. Well, his credibility is an issue.
And he's talking about the investigation of his son, the timeline that's come out, the laptop, the emails, the text messages that emerged, the investigation that's been confirmed. When you go to your editorial, when you go to your managing editor, do they care about this story at Axios?
Yeah, we'll be covering the story. And I mean, it's a federal investigation. It's going to be a big story. So absolutely, no question.
Yeah, you know what, Jonathan? I know you're going to develop sources, but this is going to be a lot tougher, isn't it?
No question. I mean, it's going to be a different, let's face it, the Trump White House will leak like a sieve for a lot of the presidency.
He would talk to you. He would tweet to you.
Sure. I mean, I've interviewed him twice just this year. So, and I've never interviewed Joe Biden. We made a lot of requests and didn't get them fulfilled. So I'm under no illusions. It's going to be a different type of challenge. No question.
Go get him. I'm confident you'll emerge as successful. Jonathan Swan, thanks for everything this year. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Brian.
All right, back in a moment.
Expanding your knowledge base. It's Brian Kilmeade.
'20 was an unforgettable year, but the biggest story of all, eclipsing COVID-19, is the plot of the news media, Facebook, and Twitter suppressing the news and the truth. The truth has become a subjective term these days, and the corrupt media cherry picks the information that matters to you. Are you tired of being subjected to viewpoint discrimination in the news? Are you one of the like-minded men and women all across the country who want their voices to be heard and to make a difference? Then Christian News Journal is the place for you. It's a free online publication for all of us to view breaking news that affects believers in America and gives us a voice on the issues that adversely impact us. You will no longer be silenced and marginalized. We'll see you on Christian News Journal, where truth and faith come together to transform the world. Visit ChristianNewsJournal.com on your computer or phone today.
This message sponsored by Proverbs Media Group.
Paid for by Bart.
After years of using talcum baby powder products. If you or a family member has been diagnosed with ovarian cancer and used talcum powder prior to the diagnosis, call Talcum Powder Help now today at 800-831-6155. You may be entitled to substantial compensation. The consultation is free and you'll pay nothing unless there is a recovery in your favor. Don't fight this alone. If you or a loved one used talcum baby powder-based products before being diagnosed or died from ovarian cancer, call Talcum Powder Help now at 800-831-6155. 800-831-6155. 800-831-6155.
On the next episode of House of Broken Dreams, hear what one woman witnessed near Jennifer Kessie's condo on the morning she disappeared.
We saw a black Malibu, and we saw a struggle in the car as if someone was taking the steering wheel out of someone's hand. Once we saw that car on the news, we both knew that was exactly the car we had seen coming out of Mosaic.
Available now on Apple Podcasts.
Saving you money, I'm Hillary Barsky. Retirement could be years away or a looming reality, but it's important to start taking steps to plan for your retirement future regardless of your age. Before you begin, you should take stock of where you are financially according to GoBankingRates.com. It's essential to decide on a realistic retirement date. If you want to retire before your full Social Security benefits kick in, you'll want to have other sources of retirement income to draw on. Also, if you retire before age 65, you won't have access to Medicare, so you'll need other health insurance in place. Other factors to consider for retirement planning include how aggressively you're able to save and how much you'll spend in retirement. Conventional wisdom is that you'll need 70 to 90% of your pre-retirement income to live comfortably, and also gauge what kind of lifestyle you see for yourself in retirement. The best option for retirement planning is a 401k if you have access to one, and IRAs are also powerful tools. Saving you money, Hillary Barsky, Fox News.
Now, from the historical audio archives of Fox News Talk.
On January 19th, 1989, President Ronald Reagan bid farewell to Americans in his last address as president.
I've spoken of a shining city all my political life, but I don't know if I ever quite communicated what I saw when I said it. But in my mind, it was a tall, proud city. Open to anyone with the will and the heart to get here. That's how I saw it and see it still.
Stay tuned to hear more history as it unfolds before your ears. It's the audio archives of Fox News Talk.
Deck the White House halls.
I'm Casey McDonald, and today we're finding out what makes 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue so merry.
Celebrate the season at America's most famous address and see the traditions of the first families.
If you get the chance to go see those decorations, you really have to do it. It makes you remember what's great about America.
It's a White House Christmas, available now. Save 35% when you use code 35OFF. Plus, select plans include a free copy of Pete's new book and an exclusive Fox Nation Christmas tree decoration.
Talk show that's real. This is the Brian Kilmeade Show.
I think it's the case that now we can say pretty clearly that it was the Russians that engaged in this activity.
That's Mike Pompeo confirming what the AG Barr said, that all indications are this major hack was Russia. And then we had Secretary of State Pompeo, the major hack is Russia. President not convinced. Not saying it's not Russia. He's saying, why don't you think it's China? Sam is in Phoenix, Arizona. Hey, Sam.
Hey, Brian. Yeah. Hi, Brian. Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of experience since I've been to Russia and so on and so forth. And the Russians can barely make a decent milk cow machine. The Chinese have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hackers. Now, you know, Sun Tzu in The Art of War, his greatest weapon is deception. And if, you know, I'm the Chinese, I would leave lots of Russian hints for everybody to find.
Well, let me ask you, do you think Mike Pompeo's a naive guy? Do you think Mike Pompeo's a naive guy coming? He was just director of the CIA, #1 in his class in at West Point. What do you think AG Barr would say that? I mean, everybody's saying it's Russia. You don't believe it?
Okay, if everybody says it's Russia, the point is, Russia, you know, my opinion, and, you know, I've just been to Russia, you know, I've been there. They just don't have the capability to pull it off. And you know, the CIA is not Donald Trump's friend. CIA is not.
You've seen their cyber setup?
I've just seen the country, you know, I've spent time in the country and their culture.
But do you know North Korea's got an incredible cyber setup, and that's probably the poorest country on the planet.
Okay.
And yet they're still elite hackers.
Yeah.
All right, Sam, appreciate your experience, but to the people that I've gotten to know, all believe it's Russia, and those people are all voted for Donald Trump.
Fox News Radio on demand on the Fox News app. Download the app and just click listen. Plus, when you swipe left, you can listen to your favorite Fox News talk shows live. Swipe right for the latest Fox News Radio newscasts on demand. That's not all. Hear your favorite podcasts from Dana Perino, Bill Hemmer, Martha McCallum, Brett Baer, and many more. Just hit schedule, set your alarm, and click listen. Fox News Radio on the Fox News app. Download it today. America's listening to Fox News. Fox News Radio. On air, online, on demand. The latest news, your favorite talk show hosts, the hottest podcasts, all in one place. America is listening to Fox News.
Fox News, I'm Lillian Wu. Attorney General William Barr weighs in on President-elect Joe Biden's son and whether he'll appoint a special counsel to investigate Hunter Biden.
I have not seen a reason to appoint a special counsel, and I have no plan to do so before I leave.
Barr, during a press conference a short while ago, also standing by what he said on election fraud, saying he didn't think there was any systemic fraud that would have affected the outcome of the election. The Moderna vaccine arriving at hospitals around the country today, the same day President-elect Joe Biden and his wife will get their vaccines, Pfizer's. Now, healthcare workers among the first to receive the shots.
The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices says those 75 and older, as well as some frontline workers, should be next in line to get the coronavirus vaccine.
Fox's Tiny J. Powers. America's listening to Fox News.
The Dean's List with Janice Dean.
A generous customer in Ohio that ordered a beer and decided to show his appreciation for the staff makes today's Dean's List. A man walked into the Cleveland Jazz Bar called Nighttown and ordered a single $7 beer on the night it was being shut down because of the coronavirus. He then dropped a jaw-dropping $3,000 tip for the staff as he was leaving. He told the owner, Brendan Ring, to share the money with all of the employees. Brendan says he looked down at the credit card slip the man had left, and when he saw the amount, he ran after him and said, "Make no mistake, sir, we will see you when we reopen." Describing the gesture as unbelievable but symbolic of the kind of quality folks he and the staff have gotten to know over the years, Brendan shared the moment on social media and said everyone at the restaurant is feeling humbly grateful for this incredibly kind and grand gesture. In times like these, we could use more stories like these ones. Janice Dean, Fox News.
This is Fox News Talk.
Headline Rewind. 1992.
Today we have closed the book on apartheid, and that chapter is finally closed.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
It's sad to see the community that I grew up in go up in flames like this. It really is.
Just want to say, can we all get along? Can we get along?
It doesn't help matters when primetime TV has Murphy Brown, a character who supposedly epitomizes today's intelligent, highly paid professional woman, mocking the importance of fathers by bearing a child alone.
It has been an honor and a privilege to come into your homes all these years and entertain you. I bid you a very heartfelt good night.
Dade County as we know it, especially from the Kendall area south, is never going to be the same. It is fundamentally destroyed.
News as it happened then, news as it happens now.
This is Fox News Talk.
This is House Call for Health. A recent study out of USC shows most people working at home because of the pandemic report new health issues, with higher risks for women and parents of toddlers, nearly 2 out of 3. Working from home resulting in about 1.5 extra hours sitting in front of the workspace, lessened productivity, reduced communications with coworkers, more were likely to suffer from neck pain, increased work expectations and distractions, and most are likely to have less job satisfaction. The study's corresponding author says the quality of the home workspace is important. A dedicated workspace signals that you're busy and minimizes the chances of distractions and interruptions. And being more satisfied with environmental quality, including lighting and temperature, is associated with a lower chance of having new health issues. Nearly 1,000 participated in the survey. It's published in the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine. For more on the coronavirus, go to foxnewshealth.com. House Call for Health. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News.
It's the morning show that overslept. Fox Across America with Jimmy Fallon.
We do know they had problems heading into the presidential election because we did a story on here about cats. Cats that were getting ballots. That was Trump's problem. People were like, I had a mail-in ballot and got him. No, he didn't
didn't campaign in front of enough pets. That's why Biden has a cat in the White House. Yeah, he's got to pay them back.
Weekdays, noon to 3 p.m. Eastern. Listen live or get the podcast now at foxacrossamerica.com.
News.
A radio show like no other. It's Brian Kilmeade.
Friday, we finally got our FBI briefing. It was just the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, and myself. It was a very thorough briefing. No one that was in that room could walk out and say Eric Swalwell should be on the Intel Committee. The one thing you can read publicly, it wasn't Swalwell going to the FBI. It was the FBI coming to Swalwell and to the leaders to warn what they have noticed. Also, remember in the public briefing, what you've able to find out about Christina, Eric Swalwell was a this country. This is how in-depth the Chinese are at spying on America, of wanting to know, of stealing our secrets. And the Intel Committee is different than any other committee. This is where America's secrets are kept.
So, I mean, Kevin McCarthy's been relentless on this. Axios is the one who did the story for over a year, and in it shows how the Chinese have infiltrated who they label as up-and-coming Democratic lawmakers, it seems, especially in California, and we have not found out who those mayors are. But they focused on Swalwell, who ends up getting a plum assignment in the second year in the House, and he ends up being one of the president's greatest critics, not when it comes to China, but when it comes to Russia. And we know the Democrats have been reluctant to really take on China, although Senator Schumer, to his credit, has been wanting this administration to be tough on China, but I would not put him in the West Coast clique, but he is among leadership. Joining us now, Special Reports own Bret Baier. Hey, Bret, welcome back.
Hey, Brett.
And Bret, do you think that Swalwell's feeling this pressure, or is it all coming from the right, a place he loves to ignore?
I think he's probably feeling a little pressure. He hasn't really done another interview. He did one briefly at the beginning, but he hasn't answered a lot of questions. He's kind of escaped it. I think it's bigger than just Swalwell. I think it's more about China's influence, not only on Capitol Hill, but in business and across the U.S. So, expect if Republicans hold on to the Senate, there'll be some focus on China's tentacles inside the U.S. I think Swalwell probably feels a little heat, but he's being protected, by Democrats and, frankly, media who have not covered the story.
Well, I mean, you see the slim majority. Do you think there's something to it? The fact that Nancy Pelosi does not want to lose him as a voter when she runs for Speaker with that small caucus?
I mean, I think it's possible. I think she has the votes to be Speaker, but remember, I mean, you're talking about 3 people who change their mind, and she loses the majority. That's nothing in the House of 435. So, she has to play her cards right in order for the legislative priorities to get through for the Democrats.